Bore da pawb a chroeso. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this multi-location meeting of the Environment, Regeneration and Street Scene Services Scrutiny Committee on the 6th of December 2024. I'm Councillor Sean Percy. I'll be chairing this meeting today. Could you please ensure your phones are switched to silent during the meeting, please? And if you wish to speak, please raise your hand in the chamber or your electronic hand on Teams, and we will call you in. So I would just like to confirm that we'll be scrutinising items 4A and 6A from the Cabinet Full Work Programme this morning. There will be just a slight change to the order of the agenda, just to make sure that officers are available during the discussion. We're going to be scrutinising item 6A first, which is the corporate plan half-year update, and then taking item 4A. So I'll now move on to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. Members, are there any declarations of interest today?
I see no declarations, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Tom. As usual, if there's you realise you need to make one during an item, just pop your hand up and we'll take that during the item. So I'll now move to agenda item 3, which is minutes of the previous meeting on pages 5 to 30. Before I ask for a proposal and a second, do members have any questions or points of accuracy to raise? I can't see any indications there, so can I have a proposer that those minutes are accurate, please?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Tim. And a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rob Wood in the chamber. Thank you, Rob. Okay, members, if you don't indicate to the contrary, they'll take it these minutes are approved.
See no indications of the contrary, Chair. Therefore, those minutes are approved as accurate.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll now move on to our scrutiny. So we will be taking item 6A under performance monitoring first now. So that's on pages 125 to 182 of our agenda packs on ModGov. Before I go to questions, do any officers have anything to add to the report? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just to note that this performance summary covers April to September of this year and meets our duty to report on the progress of the corporate plan. You'll remember back in July, the Council adopted an updated corporate plan for 24-27, which reflects 9 strategic transformation programmes. This is a lengthy document, but due to it being a half-yearly update, going forward, these will be presented to members on a quarterly basis, so we'll be more succinct. The performance summary on both strategic and performance measures are set out against each of the scrutiny committees that they report to. We understand there's more work to be done on targets, presentation of the information to make sure it's clear. Comments from all 4 scrutiny committees will be noted following the cycle, and we'll make sure that all these comments are taken into Q3 reporting. Heads of service are here today to answer any questions in their specific areas, and I can take any general questions around the corporate plan or formatting of the report in general. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll now move on to our indications from pre-briefing. My first one is from Councillor Rob Wood. Rob.
Thanks, Chair. I've got 2 questions on the 6-monthly report. Do you want me to read through the 2 on the 2 separate pages?
That's fine.
Okay, thanks, sir. Right, my first question is on page 23 of the report. And it says we've received funding for the Welsh Coastal Path Maintenance Grant. There's not an amount in there, which, you know, I would have been interested in knowing. But my question is mainly around why hasn't this money, whatever it was, been spent on the 2 closed off sections of the Welsh Coastal Path, recently at Margam and at Baglam Britain Ferry? I would have thought it would have been of far more benefit to fix the coastal path rather than spend it on a link to the coastal path when the coastal path doesn't really exist. It's a bit like building half a bridge, really. Secondly, on page 32 of the report, on energy saving, you know, there are some quite staggering sums there that schools have saved by checking their meters and by looking at how they're funded, at the money they spend on energy. Given these large amounts of savings, has this instigated a root and branch review of all school metering and billing at our schools in the county borough. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. Just for people's members and officers' information, I believe your second question is page 160 of the overall agenda pack, page 32 of the report. I think your first question was in relation to item 4A, in terms of the coastal path point, but I'm happy to be proved wrong on that. But I think that one was on item 4A. Yeah. So if we can just take the energy saving on schools question for now. So that's for everyone's reference. It's on page 160 of the overall agenda pack. Deal. Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's been some good work done over the last few years with the schools. That's our team within Energy who've gone into the schools, and they've picked up some discrepancies. As you can imagine, with each of those is quite intensive in terms of the resource we need to thoroughly go through all the bills and check all the metering, etc., etc. Some schools have numerous supplies coming into them because the way they've developed over the years. Sometimes there are supplies historically that we've not even known about. So there's been an awful lot of work done on that. So there's a couple of strands to this with the schools. One is about the energy efficiency generally within the schools and the Sparks program that's currently kicking off with the schools. But the other bit then is the more sort of technical work, if you like, that our team do. And they are working their way through all of the schools to make sure that it's as efficient as it possibly can be. And then looking at all the other options we can do around the schools in terms of renewables and all the other things that can help to drive bills down.
Thanks, Simon. And I've just found the coastal pathway. It was in relation to this item, Rob. So I will take that as well. That was on page 150, and it comes under the rights of way development improvement. I've got my notes mixed up from the pre-briefing there, so I thought I'd double check. And that's reference to the Wales Coast Path Maintenance Grant. So I don't know if we've got someone to respond to that
Yeah, I can,
point. I see Kerry online. Thanks, Kerry.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify the position, I think the maintenance, the reference in the particular report, the maintenance of footpath 119. I don't have the actual figure that is related to this, but I'm happy to take that away, and I'll clarify for Councillor Wood subsequent to the meeting. But just to clarify, really, the maintenance of footpath 119 is a relatively low cost issue. I mean, I think the issues, and we have discussed with members previously, I think the issues surrounding the closure of parts of the Wales Coast Path, particularly around the Quays area, is a substantial cost, and it goes far away and above what monies are available within this Wales Coast Path maintenance pot that we've got. I mean, I think ultimately, that will require a significant capital investment because, as we've perhaps discussed in other sort of meetings, the Wales Coast Path in that area is being effectively undermined by the tide, essentially, which is undermining the base of the path itself. So essentially, it's not appropriate. It would probably be best to describe it that way, that we would use this particular maintenance grant for those more substantive works. The other point to perhaps raise is that in providing or identifying it being a link to the Wales Coast Path, it means that we can then tap into the Wales Coast Path maintenance budget, so that then it results in a bit of a cost saving ultimately to the authority, because we then no longer have to use or dip into the wider public rights of way maintenance budget that the team have access to, which over the years, as members will know, has been reduced over a period of time. So we certainly need spend discipline in that particular pot, so it ultimately provides a bit of a cost saving in that respect as well. So hopefully those answers the questions that members have raised. But as I said, I'm happy to go away and confirm the actual figure that has been quoted in rest of this particular issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Kerry. Rob, just coming back on those items.
Yeah, just to come back, I mean, there's the section at Margam as well, which was recently closed. I'm just, and you sort of answered your own, answered my question partially, but what concerns me is, like you said, we're able to help other paths in the council, the public rights of way, by taking money from the Welsh Coastal Path. I think the Welsh Coastal Path, we don't want to be number 22 on the list of local authorities when it comes to the condition of our coastal path. I just think, is this a slippery slope whereby money is taken from the coastal path for other projects within the county borough? Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. Do any officers want to come back on that, Kerry?
Yeah, I would just say, I think one of the criteria that is set out in terms of how this particular Wales Coast Path maintenance pot is used. It can be used, as I said earlier, for links to and from the Wales Coast Path, which is, and I believe the links that Footpath 119 actually provides is one of the first, if not the first, in Wales. So it's a positive in that respect. So, as I said, the team are not doing anything untoward in terms of using the money in this particular way. Far from it. They are. It is a means of using appropriately the monies that are available in this particular grant pot. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Kerry. Now bring in Vice Chair Tim Bowen. Tim.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just going back on the energy saving. I know Rob mentioned the schools and everything else, but there's one on there for 74,000 for the Knoll. Are we keeping an eye on all other buildings to make sure that the electricity bills are, monitored and we're not being overcharged? Or is it just the schools and the country parks?
No, we go through all of our buildings. And as I said earlier, sometimes these things are incredibly resource intensive in terms of dealing, as you probably know, when you're dealing with energy companies at home with your own domestic bill. They're not the easiest people and they don't respond as quickly as you would hope sometimes. But it is incredibly intensive labour-wise, but we are getting away around all the buildings across the whole of the authority.
Yes, thank you for that. All homes are offered smart meters. Does this work for council buildings with the smart meters, or is this something that is not up to standard for our type of buildings at the moment?
Probably veering on more technical expertise than I have available, unfortunately. But generally speaking, we use half-hourly metering on a lot of our schools and a lot of our bigger buildings especially. So that gives us a lot of real-time information about how that energy is used. And it's what the energy companies want, obviously, because you're a high-end user.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thanks, both. Just a brief follow-up question for me on that point of the building estate. So you mentioned, Simon, we're sort of getting around all the buildings and doing this sort of energy audit. So is there going to be any report done on that work? Have we got an idea what the time scale is of that? Because obviously it sounds like we've made some useful savings in a few areas already. So is that, do we have a time scale? I know you said it's quite resource intensive. Just be curious to know what the full cycle might look like for that work.
It's an ongoing iterative process for us, so we can report at any time, really, giving you a sort of position as to where we are, if that would be helpful. It would, obviously it never stops. It just carries on, and you're looking for efficiencies all the time. But we're quite happy to come back to board. What we have done, which we took to CMB last year, was a bit of a spreadsheet, if you like, about the top end users. So I think it was about the top 50 users or top 48 users, and then how we're targeting things within that, because obviously you need to target the bigger users first before you're looking at the smaller ones at the end.
Yeah, I think that'd be something committee members would be interested in seeing in terms of that sort of ongoing work around efficiency savings and decarbonisation. I can see Councillor Hurley did pop his hand up. I don't know if you want to come in on this, Councillor Hurley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, it was just an addition and awareness with the smart meters that sometimes they don't always work. I know the government have massively pushed out for them to be installed, but in rural areas they won't connect. So sometimes it's not an option. So if we have got schools and buildings in areas like that, then connectivity should be checked first, because otherwise they won't work. So thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Okay, so the next question I've got is one of my own. I've got just a couple of a brief question as well. In relation to page 28 of the report, which is page 156 of the overall agenda pack, there's reference to place plans there, and in particular the Neath, Talbot and Pontardawe ones. I'd just be interested where we are in terms of completing that piece of work. Obviously, it's showing on track in terms of the performance measure. I'm aware quite a bit of work has been done on those, and we've had, public engagement sessions, etc. But would appreciate an update in terms of when they may be coming to Cabinet for sign off, and then onwards to be implemented. Diolch.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you would be aware, we had some of the place plans drafted for discussion, really, and then we did some consultation with members and some of the key local groups and businesses. Following on from that consultation, then there was obviously quite a lot of feedback that we got, and so we went back then, because obviously we need to get the plans redrafted, so back to Welsh Government to get some further funding to do that piece of work with the urbanists. And that work will be coming forward then, I think around about the sort of March, April time of this year, once all the new plans have been drafted. Obviously, there's the key ones in Neath, Port Talbot and Pontardawe, but then we're also covering some of the villages as well, or the sort of towns, villages. And I think there was a question on that as well about why certain ones were chosen and certain ones weren't. That was really because we were only allowed to do 6 initially. Welsh Government wanted a bit of a geographical spread around that. And so there were the 6 that were picked. That's not to say the others won't be done, just they weren't done in the first tranche. And then to get around the issue then around, because obviously what these place plans do is enable you to get funding from Welsh Government to fund little projects within the towns, but to get around then that's why we set up the funds around SPF, etc., so we could target some of the villages and towns that weren't included within the within that initial piece of work around transforming towns. But the ultimate aim is you'd get a place plan in place for all of the sort of larger conurbations, if you like.
Fantastic, thank you. So just another one on I suppose regeneration schemes. In terms of, again, this is page 52 of the report in the overall agenda, it's page 180. There's reference to the Levelling Up Fund projects, and Nôl and Pont Neath shown as on track at the moment. Now, I'm aware there's been ongoing complications with Pont Neath. I was just wondering if that is currently on track, or whether we're still experiencing some uncertainty over the future of that project. Diolch.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Pont Neath, we are still dealing with the local landowner there. We are promised every week that we will get a full response on everything, and so the team phone either the lawyers or the individual involved on basically a weekly basis to try and push the hand on that. We're waiting for evaluation to come back on their side. A revised valuation, I think, is about valuation 4 or 5 that we've had done now, to try and push that through. They tell us that end that they're happy to do the deal as long as it's one that's acceptable to them. So we're hopeful that we'll get some firm response before Christmas on that, because obviously we've gone out to pack for the project. So we've moved all the other stuff alongside it to make sure we're ready to go. And so we're hopeful we'll get something back on that. And I did notice when I came past this morning, the planning notices are up on the theatre as well. So there's a fair bit of movement on both the Port Talbot project and obviously for those who are in and around Neath, they'll see that we've taken the old visitor centre down and we're starting to look at the new visitor centre there as well. So there's a lot of progress on that project too.
Thanks, Simon. Tim?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I need to give a declaration on that one for the Knoll Country Park.
Yeah, that's no problem.
And they're actually a month in front at the moment. And it's foundations and steel have gone up. So
that's good news. Okay, so there's just one. I've got one point just on the the sort of data and presentation of the report. Again, we've fed this back in some of the other scrutiny committee meetings, but I think it's worth flagging here as well where there's specific measures here. So I'm just going to grab the page number now. So that's page 157 of the overall report, and page 29 of the half-yearly summary. It was just one of the examples where, for example, there's percentage of people satisfied with the local area as a place to live showing us on track, but there's actually no data available from the last 2 years. So I'm not sure we can report it as a green. And it's just some feedback there that if we haven't got the data, I think we just need to find another way of presenting some of those performance measures. There's others where actually there's no data available in the report as well that are being presented as on track, including the one immediately above it. So I've just picked those out as examples from this committee. But I know you've had that feedback as well, Louise, from others.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we have noted that feedback from previous scrutinies. I think with regards some of these measures as well, as you can see from the delivery of the catch-up clean-up, whilst we haven't got the savings, we do know that the work is going ahead as it's noted up in the strategic priorities, but definitely we will note that for Q3. So thank you for that feedback.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got one more question, and apologies that a lot are coming from the chair today. We have got questions from other members on item 4A, I can assure everyone. So the last question from me on 6A is in relation to page 38 of the half-yearly update, and I'll just get the actual page number as well. It's always complicated. We've got to page 166. So there's a performance measure there about the percentage of waste reused, recycled or composted. So I just wanted just to ask Mike, I suppose, on this one, in terms of decisions recently taken by the Cabinet on the direction of the waste strategy, does that impact this target being on track for the 70%? Or are we comfortable that the existing recycling measures that are in place are going to allow us to reach that target? So I'd appreciate some feedback on that one, because I understand officers are going to will be having to review some of the waste plans following the rejection of the 3 weekly collections and the charging for green waste proposals.
Okay, Chair. Yeah, there will, there is likely to be an impact. It's something we're reviewing. Obviously, as was stated by Louise at the beginning, this is a retrospective report. So the decisions that were taken were obviously past this report. So you will be getting an update in Q3. One of the things I'm grappling with at the moment is that there has been a change in what we might term the accountancy around the performance measures this year, in that NRW have changed the system slightly. So, for example, when we used to send waste to a plant for reprocessing, and we know there's an amount agreed with NRW on the process about how much diversion or recycling you would get. In the past, when we used to send material off to a plant, once it got to the plant, we would count the recycling. Under the new accountancy rules that everyone's been informed of across Wales from NRW this year, we can only count it when it actually comes out the back of the plant. Now, once that's been running 1 or 2 years, it doesn't make any difference. But obviously in the first year that it's changed, this year, there's an element of material that we know is sat on the floor in plants that we can't count. So it's very difficult for me to actually, I'm having to do a lot of research at the moment to try and predict exactly where we'll be at the end of the year. And we don't quite know how much material we'll send for reprocessing that will spill into next year's figures and not be contained within this year's. So that's something that I'm looking at the moment. And as I say, there'll be an update in the third quarter, because obviously that will need to take into account the decisions of the council since the half year.
Thanks, Mike. I mean that's really quite useful. I'm sure the committee members weren't aware of that sort of change in of the data gathering process as well. So I think that is going to be that's going to have an impact by the sounds of it. I think we'll look forward to a more detailed report on that one down the line. But appreciate your response there. I'm going to take the last question now for item 6A, which was Bob Wolford's question. I think this is in relation to reporting some of these things when things change so quickly. I think it probably is quite a timely question based on what we've just said about waste. I don't know if you want to come in on that, Bob.
Thank you, Chair. It was more of an observation and a question that obviously with the change in landscape that we're going through continually, a lot of these reports don't make any sense because they're out of date straight away. And I know it's very difficult at the moment with the budget going through, and we're trying to sort that out, and everything else is changing in the landscape. But it was just an observation when we were reading through that sometimes these reports are out of date before we even get them.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, we take on board your point, and I think, as you will notice, because we've updated the corporate plan sort of mid-political term, that was very much the reasoning why the 22-27 corporate plan was very heavily based around recovery from COVID. So, you know, there was a realisation that we needed to update, but probably like a lot of plans and strategies, everything moves on by the time you get it printed. So I'm not sure whether any other heads of service have got anything to add, but I think it is just a point that we have to note. Going forward, I think we need to streamline some of our priorities in the corporate plan, so that we're looking at an overarching position rather than being specific with each of the details. That detail would then come from delivery plans at a service level. So I think it is just about noting your point at the moment. And I think, as you say, it is an ever-changing landscape, and I don't think with the best will in the world we can produce that many plans as we, with every change. So yeah, we do note. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think those points are well made, aren't they? And I mean, sometimes there is a value and a benefit in having that retrospective look back. What did we think was going to happen? How do we think this was going? And actually, you can see sometimes with the benefit of hindsight when we get these reports with a little bit of delay, actually how things have panned out. So it does give us a slightly different perspective, I think, sometimes, which is helpful. Okay, so that's the last question I've got down on my list for this item. So I'm just going to have a quick check if anyone else has any questions on 6A before we move on. I can't see any there. So members, this report is for monitoring. Therefore, we note the report, okay? So I'll now move us to back to part 1 and item 4 of the agenda, which is the corporate plan annual report on pages 31 to 124 of the overall agenda pack. So this annual report has been to Cabinet on the 13th of November and is being presented today for information to us. Before I go to questions, does anyone have anything to add to the report?
Thank you, Chair. So as you've noted, and this is a reflective document again on the 23-24. We've prepared this report to meet our duty to report on the corporate plan, and this is based on the 22-27 version of the corporate plan. Again, heads of service are available to answer any questions, and I can answer general corporate plan questions. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. So my first indication is from Councillor Cathy James. Cathy.
Thanks, Chair. It's a bit of a two-part question. I know part of the answer is to do with what we've already discussed, the fact that the corporate plan has basically changed between these two sets of reports. Picking up on a couple of the aims in this report, on page 83 of the cabinet of the papers, rather the report. Sorry, I've been ill, my brain's still really not with it. So number 12 on there. Worked with partners to further develop flood and pollution mitigation measures. That's showing up as an amber. And then on page 101, under Wellbeing Objective 4, we've got number 11 showing as red. That's increased capacity within the Regeneration and Economic Development team to better position the council to develop and bid for funding to support the development of the local economy. And we've also got 19 showing as red, which is assess the impact of the changes made to the council's operating model, bring forward proposals to repurpose assets that are surplus to requirements, etc. Two parts of the question. First of all, can we have some more information in terms of what the targets were, why they've been missed and what's happening about them, because there doesn't seem to be any of that sort of information within that report. And then all three of those, when I look at the report that we've just scrutinised, the 6-monthly report, there's no mention of any of these aims in the new report. So they're things that we were missing or hadn't hit, and now suddenly they seem to have disappeared as aims anyway. So I'm just keen to explore that a bit. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Who wants to pick this one up? Simon, I think there's some things in there for you, perhaps.
I apologise, Chair. I was dealing with an issue to do with the red warning coming in last night, so I missed the first bit of that. Sorry.
Okay, Kathy, do you want to just? Was there a question there for Simon? In terms of
there's the three aims are on page 101, it's number 11 and number 19. And then on page 83, it's number 12.
So number 11 was increased capacity within the Regen Economic Development team. And that was marked as red. And the other one was number 18, you said, was it? 19,
yeah.
Sorry. And that was impact of the changes made to the council's operating model, bring forward proposals to repurpose assets that were surplus to requirement, office, research, development, workspaces, starter units, etc. That was down as red. So it's just those items.
In terms of increasing capacity, that obviously is difficult within the current budgets that we've got, but it is something that we'll be discussing with the new chief executive in forthcoming weeks. We have, through SPF, managed to get some additions to the business team, for example, to help with the business support, particularly around issues around the grants that we went out to via SPF, but also around the Tata situation and the complications around managing the implications for the supply chain. But in terms of the regeneration team more widely, we haven't had any further resources yet. And the second part then around surplus assets. We've had a long program for the last 15 or 20 years of divesting ourselves of buildings that we no longer feel either suitable for service delivery, or we can arrange service delivery in a slightly different way. And I think just off the top of my head, I think we've gone from something like around 1,500 buildings initially, or what we'd call units rather than buildings, I suppose, because sometimes like a comprehensive school might have 10 units, but we would class it as one building effectively, or one site. But certainly from the sites wise, we've probably sold about a third of our sites over the last 15 years, or handed leases back. So we're pretty lean in that sense at the moment. There are still ones that come up, and when that comes up, the process generally is that the asset will be circulated around the directorates, including education, social services, etc., to make sure there aren't any internal requirements that we're not aware of, that they might say that that building might fit the bill. Sometimes that drags on longer than we would like, and it's difficult to get firm decisions. But as soon as that decision is made, that building is either then leased out or alternatively sold. As you can imagine, with some of the buildings, there may not be a huge amount of value attached to them, but what it does do is lose the liabilities for the council.
Thanks, Simon. I can see Councillor Hurley is indicating as well. Jeremy?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just on the regen team, really. I've seen how obviously they were funded, a lot of it was funded predominantly by SPF funding, where the team was increased, did fabulous work. But then with the uncertainty over the SPF funding towards the end of the funding period, it makes it really difficult to sort of sustain the team. I know some have been transferred across into helping out with Tata. But yeah, the difficulty is that we had no certainty regarding future SPF funding, and also the fact that it might be rerouted through Welsh Government, which would mean that we're going to get less because they'll top slice it. So there's that uncertainty of how we can move forward. I think we did ask the Industrial Alliance Group to lobby UK Gov regarding this, which they've done continuously, and it has resulted in some sort of more certainty. So hopefully that we can take a different position on it now. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Kathy, do you wish to come back?
Yeah, thanks for explaining why these were showing up as red. My second concern, though, is the fact that it now seems that neither of these are showing up as aims, targets, whatever. Does that mean that maintaining the size of the team, increasing the size of the team is no longer a priority, or is it just not such a high priority, or is it just not something that's being reported on now?
Simon?
It certainly remains a priority for me, if I'm honest. It's just about how we manage that within existing budget limits that we've got, and salary caps, etc. I mean, the other slight problem we get with a lot of our recruitment these days is there aren't so many people out there in the market who can do this type of work. So attracting people on the salaries that we offer is often a little bit tricky. But I mean, certainly increasing the team over a period of time is definitely a requirement for us, because there are such big pieces of work ongoing at the moment, through levelling up and SPF and Tata, Freeports, etc., that we need to have that capacity within the team.
Thanks, Simon. Louise, you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on Councillor James's reference to the aims flowing through from one corporate plan to the other. There is still a reference to flooding, that's on page 146 of the pack, under the 3-year aims. And there is still a reference to securing funding to establish a strong quick gateway to business support. And that is on page 170 of the pack. I think perhaps what we should have made clearer was that this corporate plan is around the transformation programs that we need to invest to save for the longer term. The corporate plan is also supported by heads of service delivery plans, so they include a lot more of the detail of operation and service. So obviously they are available to view if needed. So they sort of underpin some of the work around sort of underneath the corporate plan. So I hope that answers Councillor James's question a bit further.
Thank you. I can see Mike Roberts has his hand up as well. Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back to Councillor James's query on page 83, item 12, the amber on the flood risk. Of course, this committee has seen the emerging update on the council's flood risk strategy and action plan. So we have that, and we know we've got areas which are and properties subject to significant risk of flooding, and we've got schemes that we want to put through and that we are working on to address those. I think it was a little bit uncomfortable showing everything as green when we know until the schemes are built that risk remains. So I think that's really where we're not saying we've missed out on anything. We're not really saying there's a problem, but until the schemes are done, we're not comfortable to say everything's green, because it isn't, because that risk is still there until the schemes are delivered.
Thank you, Mike. Kathy?
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. And I fully appreciate amber doesn't necessarily mean failure. It can just mean, yes, we're headed in the right direction, but not there yet. Is that aim also reflected in the new plan? Is that another one that's been subsumed under something else and I couldn't see it?
Not really clear on that. I don't know if Louise can help on that.
Yeah, I can fill in the gaps on that one, Mike. Apologies, Councillor James. There was going to be a reference to a flooding updates, but unfortunately we didn't get it in time to bring to Cabinet and then on to scrutiny. So that will be appearing for Q3.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. I think it might be useful going forward for this reporting, accepting that there seem to have been a lot of changes and a lot of redefinitions, and a lot of the new aims incorporate lots of the old aims. I think it might be useful to have something maybe explaining that a bit more, so that we can track back, because obviously these things do tend to be quite forward focused in terms of sort of where are we and where do we expect to be in the next year. But I think it's also useful to be able to track progress back, because something that's currently amber that was red is good, something that's currently amber that was green isn't. So I think maybe a bit more explanation in terms of how the old stuff relates to the new stuff, I think would be useful for us. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy. Louise?
Thank you. I've noted that for the next performance update. And as I said, this is obviously a change in corporate plan, and with it being more streamlined to the transformation programmes, as I said earlier, some of the work would have to be found in service delivery plan. So we're not going to be able to report on every single thing at committee. So thank you.
Thanks. Okay. So I'm just looking down my list. The only other indication I've got was a comment from Councillor Gareth Rice. I'm not sure if you still wish to make that after pre-brief, Gareth.
Yeah, if I could, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just the initial observation. I know it was an annual report, but there's a lot of things to report on. It was quite a lengthy document. And if it's going out to the public and Joe Public picks that up, it could be a bit off-putting, the amount of detail. I know there's a lot to report on, but like I say, maybe a summarised one for Joe Public to look at. But that aside, I was looking in particular in the community section on pages 34 to 37 as good examples of, I know they report of what has been done, but seen as it's an annual report of a plan going on to 27, a lot of these initiatives and projects are still live. So although you've reported what's happening, there's no way of knowing how to get involved going forward. For example, it says digital inclusion. There's a project in the Kimler which is very, very good. But if in the area, how do you get involved in it? It's still ongoing to 27. There is the homelessness project. There's a grant, a 2-year grant from the Welsh Assembly for empty properties. Again, that's great, but how do you get involved? How do you access that information? Because it is still live. So it's just a few other examples I could mention as well, but actually projects that are ongoing that people would like to get involved in, there's no information there of how to get involved with them initiatives. Thank you.
Thanks, Gareth. I don't know if you want to pick that up, Louise.
Thanks. That's really a pertinent point, actually, and we can from now on put extra hyperlinks in to take you to the relevant either contact or information around how to get involved or for further information. I think on the point Councillor Rice made around an easy read, we are trialling for the first year a supporting video to go alongside the annual report, which will be released to coincide with the report going to council in January, and then taking that forward, then obviously it will be more we will be looking at doing more interactive things, so residents can feel like they can read or view something that's being a little bit more concise. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor Rice.
Thanks, Louise. Gareth?
Yeah, no, that's great. Like I say, I'm sure it is off-putting for a lot of people. A video, it would be great. But yeah, thank you. Great. Cheers.
Yeah, I think the suggestion of the sort of hyperlinks would be helpful. I mean, I always think back before I was a councillor trying to navigate some of these things from the outside, and it was always very difficult. You'd find the strategy in a document, then you'd have to try and find it somewhere else and find all the individual projects. So if that could be done, I think it would just allow, not even just the public, I think even members sometimes, to navigate these documents and follow that sort of train of thought a little bit easier. I can see Councillor Laura Williams has indicated online. Laura?
Thanks, Chair. Quite similar to Gareth's question, but mine's around the Let's Talk Business events. So it's stated that you had 52. I just want to know how successful these were for footfall, and are there any plans to continue with them in the next financial year?
Simon?
I think I haven't got the figures on the footfall, but I can certainly get them for you. If you'd like to email me on those, and I'll certainly sort that out for you. Generally, they're all very well attended, I think, and we think, otherwise we would probably stop doing them, that they generate not only a lot of interest, but a lot of good work that comes out of them as well. So we certainly intend to carry on doing as many of them as we possibly can. I mean, the sort of format of them might change over a period of time, but in general, the connections with businesses we need to make as strong as possible, especially, as we said earlier, given the issues we got with Tata, etc. So we are working hard to make sure that we continue to engage with all of the business community.
Thanks, Simon. Laura, is that okay?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Brilliant. And just for members' information, Councillor Hurley has popped some links in the chat as well in relation to some of the comments made by Councillor Gareth Rice. I don't know if you want to come in again, Jeremy, on this last point.
Thanks, Sean. Chair, sorry. Yeah, regarding the business events, still having active businesses myself, I attended, and probably after running businesses for 30 odd years or 40 years, that's the first business event I probably attended. And the realization is, if you've got businesses in your wards, tell them to try and attend, because early advice is probably the best advice I can give you. And they were so helpful. And, you know, it's stuff that when people are starting businesses, it's critical that they have this advice. So, and the ones I went to were really well attended, and not just our own teams, external teams as well, from Welsh Gov, from Business Wales. So lots of advice there and really useful, great events. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I think it's sort of fair to say that businesses, in my experience, that have engaged with the council and the team have all had a very positive experience. But you're right, it's getting those businesses to realise what opportunities and support is out there. So I think, yeah, that's something for us all to take away back into our wards there. Okay, so that's the last indication I've got at the moment. Does anyone else have any questions to ask on item 4A? Can't see any there. So again, this item was for information, therefore we note the report. So I'll now move us on to item 5 is to consider items from the Scrutiny Forward Work Programme. We have no items from the Scrutiny Forward Work Programme today. And then we'll go on to our current Forward Work Programme, which is item 7 on pages 183 to 204. There have been a number of changes to our Forward Work Programme. Today's meeting was supposed to have originally some other items in. I don't know if Tom just wants to run through those briefly, if that's okay. We did go through them in pre-briefing, but I know some members weren't available there, and it's just going to set out some reports that are coming to us later than expected, mainly, or that have already been covered.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll just run through these briefly. I know some members weren't in pre-briefing. It's just to sort of explain the Forward Work Programme to the public as well, if they've seen earlier versions. So you may have noted that we were potentially going to have the Audit Wales report Springing Forward Strategic Assets come in today. That one has now been moved because it's no longer going directly to Cabinet, but instead going to Governance and Audit. So therefore it's not available for this committee, but it will be scrutinised elsewhere. Updating the side waste policy was going to Cabinet on the 15th of January, but that was obviously amalgamated into the previous report we scrutinised in our last meeting, therefore on the 8th of November, so that obviously wasn't going to be coming today. The use of containers on safari collections, that has moved from the 13th of November Cabinet, and we will now be scrutinising that on the 31st of January. So that has been updated on the forward work programme. You may also note the regeneration strategy. We have had a change to that, so that's now going to the 14th of February scrutiny meeting, because that has changed to, I believe, the 12th of March Cabinet. For fleet and heavy plant renewals, that's moved from the 19th of March to the 5th of February Cabinet. So we've scheduled that for the 14th of March in order to scrutinise that as well. One update, which isn't technically for our committee, but the chair has had a discussion with the chair of education. So members may remember there has been previous interest and crossover in the Aberavon Seafront Master Plan. So you should have hopefully received invites now from my colleague Pam for the scrutiny meeting, which I believe is on the 16th of January for education. So if you do wish to attend to sort of observe and ask questions on the Aberavon Seafront Master Plan, that will be going to that scrutiny meeting. We also have, let's have a look, where are we? The Highways and Engineering Works Programme, there was a discussion in pre-briefing, and members have indicated that they are now keen to scrutinise that. Because of the schedule, we've had to add an additional scrutiny meeting, which will now be on the 4th of April, in order to do pre-decision scrutiny on that. So that will be added to the forward work programme as well. But I don't believe that will be on the one that's in your packs now. I think that's everything, Chair. But if I've missed anything, let me know.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, there's quite a big list of changes, but they are reflected on our forward work programme, except for the additional meeting for the Highways Works programme and our invite to education scrutiny. So are there any questions or comments from members on the forward work programme at the moment? Can't see any there. So again, as usual, you can always get in touch with us if you wish to add anything to the forward work programme or discuss any items. Just give us a call and we'll sort that out. So that brings me to agenda item 8, which is urgent items, and I can report that I have no urgent items for today's meeting. And therefore, that brings us to the end of business today. I just want to thank everybody for their time and attendance this morning. Diolch yn fawr.
Sean?
Yeah, Bob?
Yeah, sorry, just one comment. I'm a little bit disappointed I wasn't put an email for the Christmas jumpers. So I can see that the chair and vice chair obviously were.
We'll have to send a memo out next year, I'm afraid. Diolch pawb.
Diolch.